It is 10:42 p.m. You are lying in bed, the house is quiet, but your mind is still racing at the office. The blue light from your phone illuminates your face as you scroll through one last email, or perhaps a newsfeed that never ends. Does it ever feel like you have lost the exit button to your own life? If you find yourself caught in this always-on cycle, please know that Slow Down a Little hears you. You are the pillar of your world, balancing the delicate needs of aging parents while navigating a digital childhood for your children that looks nothing like the one you remember. It is a heavy mantle to wear, being the bridge between two completely different eras of human history. Many of us feel a sense of personal failure when we are exhausted, as if we simply aren't strong enough. But the truth is much kinder. What you are feeling is a documented psychological phenomenon called role strain. Science shows that your nervous system is acting like an engine that is never allowed to turn off, keeping you in a constant state of low-level alarm. Today, we are going to explore the neuroscience behind why our generation finds it so hard to log out, and how we can reclaim our default mode network, that sacred internal space where the brain actually heals and dreams. We will discover together that your weariness isn't a weakness. It is the natural response of a resilient soul carrying two worlds at once. Let's begin this journey toward finding your quiet center again. To find that quiet center again, we must first travel back to a time when silence was not an empty space to be filled, but a sanctuary to be inhabited. Think back to a Saturday afternoon in your childhood. Perhaps you were sitting on a porch or under a large oak tree, watching the slow dance of dust motes in a shaft of sunlight. There was no vibration in your pocket, no ping of a notification, no digital tether to the rest of the world. If you walked out the front door with your bicycle, you effectively disappeared for hours. There was a profound, unspoken trust that you would simply return when the streetlights flickered on. Your parents didn't track your GPS coordinates, they simply waited. In that gap of time, that space where you were unreachable, you were truly free. As Slow Down a Little reflects on those years, we realize we were likely the last generation to experience boredom as a creative force. Remember those long, unscripted hours? When there was nothing to stream and nothing to scroll, your mind began to wander. You stared at the ceiling until the patterns in the plaster became mountain ranges. You turned a simple stick into a legendary sword, or a piece of chalk into a city. Without realizing it, you were exercising a powerful psychological muscle, the ability to generate internal experiences without external stimulation. In modern psychology, we call the brain's state during these moments the default mode network. Think of it as your mind's home base, or its self-healing mode. It is the specific neural network that activates when we are not focused on a task or distracted by a screen. It is where our brain processes emotions, consolidates memories, and dreams up new ideas. For us, the analog kids, this network was our natural habitat. We learned to sit with ourselves, to endure stillness without panic, and to wait for life to happen in its own time. We developed what researchers call delayed gratification, the quiet strength to know that the best things aren't always available on demand. But then the world shifted. Just as we were crossing the threshold into adulthood, the modem song began to wail in our basements. We became a liminal generation, a people living on the threshold between two worlds. We are tech bilinguals. We speak the language of deep eye-to-eye presence, where silence and pauses carry weight. But we also mastered the digital tongue of edited profiles and curated connections. For a while, we maintained a border. Do you remember when the internet was a place you went to? You sat at a desk, you dialed in, And most importantly, you logged out. There was a clear exit button. When you turned off the computer, the digital world stayed in the machine. You walked back into the physical world, where the air was real and your attention was your own. Today, that border has dissolved. The place we used to visit has become the atmosphere we breathe. The exit button has vanished. Our source materials describe this as the always-on culture. Because we carry the memory of the before, we feel the weight of the after more acutely than those born after the digital turn. We have a transactional worldview, meaning we subconsciously understand that our relationships are deeply affected by the physical and digital settings we inhabit. When our phones live on the dinner table, the setting of our marriage changes. When we can be reached by our boss at 9 p.m., the setting of our home is violated. This is why you feel that constant low-grade hum of exhaustion. You are trying to apply the default mode of your analog childhood, the need for deep focus and quiet reflection, to a digital adulthood that demands your attention be fragmented and sold. You feel a digital dissonance because your nervous system remembers the piece of being missing, but your current life demands you to be found at every moment. If you feel like you are struggling to keep up, please take a deep breath. It is not because you are failing. It is because you are a bridge. You are an architect of context, translating the structured, slow logic of the past into the fluid, rapid logic of the future. You are the keepers of the memory of what it feels like to just be without an audience. This liminal identity is not a defect. It is a unique strength. You know how to log out, even if the world has made it difficult to find the button. You carry the exit within you. But as we stand on this bridge, many of us find ourselves being pulled in two different directions by the people we love most. In one hand, we hold the hands of our parents, who are navigating the autumn of their lives. In the other, we hold our children, who are native to this digital forest we only recently entered. Why does this position of being the bridge feel like it is tearing us apart? You carry that exit button within you, hidden in the quietest chambers of your heart, even when the world outside has forgotten it ever existed. But right now, as you stand on that bridge between two eras, that button can feel buried under a mountain of people who need you to be on all the time. If the first half of our journey was about where we came from, this second part is about the weight of where we are standing right now. It is about a phenomenon that defines our middle years, a state where being the strong one has slowly transformed from a badge of honor into a heavy, silent mantle. Imagine it is a Tuesday afternoon and the rain is streaking against your windshield. You are sitting in a parking lot, the groceries in the back seat starting to lose their chill. You have exactly 7 minutes before you need to pick up your daughter from her swim meet, but your phone is vibrating in the cup holder. It's a message from the nurse at your father's assisted living facility. You stare at the screen, and for a split second, your grip on the steering wheel tightens until your knuckles turn white. You aren't angry at your father, and you aren't angry at your daughter. You are just heavy. You feel like a piece of silk being pulled by two giant hands in opposite directions, and you are waiting for the sound of the tear. At Slow Down a Little, we want to acknowledge this specific, visceral fatigue. You are part of what psychologists call the sandwich generation. It's a term that sounds almost lighthearted, like a quick lunch, but for those living it, it feels more like being the structural beam of a house that is undergoing an earthquake. Our source materials describe a very real condition you might be feeling right now: role strain. To understand role strain, we have to look at the architecture of your life. It isn't just that you have a long to-do list. It's that the roles you play are fundamentally in conflict. In one room, you are the adult child, trying to preserve the dignity of a parent who is losing their memory, an act that requires immense patience and a slow analog heart. In the next room, you are the modern parent, trying to guide a child through the treacherous, lightning-fast rapids of the digital age. These two worlds speak different languages, move at different speeds, and demand different versions of you. When you try to be everything to everyone, the internal friction creates a heat that eventually leads to burnout. But there is an even deeper layer to this, rooted in the way we were raised. Think back to those analog years we discussed. We were the generation of latchkey kids and figure it out yourself. We internalized a very specific core belief: strength equals self-reliance. We learned that to be a capable adult meant never being a burden, never asking for directions, and always carrying the heavy boxes alone. This belief made us resilient. It helped us navigate the economic shocks and world-shaking events of our youth. However, in midlife, this once helpful belief has become a trap. It has morphed into a silent, subconscious command: I am not allowed to be tired. Because you are the pillar, you believe that if you lean, the whole roof collapses. So you stop telling people you're overwhelmed. You stop reporting your own weather. You become invisible within your own family, the one whose stability is so taken for granted that no one thinks to ask, "But David, who is holding you up?" Our source material from the Cambridge Handbook of Personal Relationships points to something called generativity, a concept by psychologist Erik Erikson. It is the noble stage of life where we find meaning by caring for the generations that follow and those that preceded us. It is a beautiful, sacred impulse. But when generativity is practiced without self-compassion, it becomes ego stagnation. You become a stagnant pool, giving all your water away until there is nothing left but dry, cracked earth at the bottom. If you are listening to this and feeling a lump in your throat, please hear this. You are not failing. The exhaustion you feel is not a sign that you are lesser than your parents or out of touch with your children. It is the natural, biological response of a human being carrying a structural load that was never meant for one person alone. You are speaking the song of the bridge, and it is okay if your voice is a little shaky. The weight of being the strong one is a structural burden, not a personal inadequacy. You have spent years fine-tuning your ability to care for the caregiving system of your family, but you have neglected the most important part of that system, your own nervous system. Do you ever notice how your heart races even when you're just sitting still, or how a simple question from your spouse feels like an attack? That is your body trying to tell you something. It is telling you that the engine has been running in the red for too long. Before we can learn to find that nut-twat, that exit button, again, we need to understand the mechanical reality of what this constant pressure is doing to the very cells of your body. To understand these cells, we have to look at the engine humming beneath your skin. You might notice it first in your shoulders, that subtle, creeping tightness that feels like you're wearing a heavy wool coat 2 sizes too small, even in the heat of summer. Or perhaps it's the way your jaw remains clenched as you drive through the suburban sprawl, your knuckles turning white against the steering wheel, while the radio plays a song you aren't really hearing. This isn't just stress in the way we usually talk about it. This is the physical signature of a nervous system that has forgotten how to rest. At Slow Down a Little, we want to help you visualize what is happening inside. Imagine your body is a high-performance vehicle. To navigate life, you were given an incredible mechanism called the sympathetic nervous system. Think of this as your gas pedal. It is the system that activates the fight, flight, or freeze response. In our analog childhoods, this pedal was reserved for true emergencies, a car swerving into your lane, a loud crash in the night. Once the danger passed, you naturally moved your foot to the other pedal, the parasympathetic nervous system, or your brakes. This is the system of rest, digestion, and deep connection. The struggle for our generation is that the digital world has effectively rigged our gas pedal so that it stays pressed down, just a little bit, all day and all night. When an email notification pings at 9 p.m., or when you see a news headline that makes the world feel fragile, your brain sends a signal to your adrenal glands. They release chemicals called epinephrine, which you might know as adrenaline, and cortisol. In short bursts, these are life-saving.
Epinephrine sharpens your focus and makes your heart pump faster to get oxygen to your muscles. Cortisol provides the steady fuel to keep you alert. But for the sandwich generation, the alarm never truly stops ringing. You are managing the logistics of your parents' medications while simultaneously worrying about your child's social media world. Because there is no longer a clear "newt twat," no logout button, your sympathetic nervous system stays mildly mobilized.
This is why you might find yourself lying in bed at 2 a.m., your body exhausted, but your mind racing like a motor that won't turn over. You are tired but wired. Your engine is running at high RPMs while the car is in park. Over time, this constant chemical bath makes you irritable. A simple, innocent question from your spouse, like, "What's for dinner?" suddenly feels like an attack on your very soul. You react with a sharp tone, not because you are a mean person, but because your nervous system is currently convinced you are under siege. Please take a moment to let that sink in. Your irritability, your background anxiety, your inability to focus, these are not character flaws. You are not weak or failing at your life. Your body is simply responding normally to an abnormal amount of pressure. You are an incredibly resilient machine that has been asked to run at top speed for 20 years without a tune-up. The good news is that while we cannot always change the world around us, we can manually signal our engine to slow down. We can find the brakes again through the one part of our survival system that we can actually control, our breath. Right now, wherever you are, unless you're driving, I want to invite you to try something very simple. This is a technique called 4-6 regulation. When we breathe in quickly and shallowly, we tell the sympathetic nervous system to stay on. But when we intentionally lengthen our exhale, we send a direct message to the brain that says, "The threat has passed. It is safe to rest." Try it with me. Close your eyes if you can. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let the air out very slowly through your mouth, as if you're blowing through a straw, for a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you do this, feel the weight of your body in your seat. Notice the suit of armor in your shoulders beginning to soften. When you exhale for longer than you inhale, you are physically stimulating the brake of your nervous system. You are giving your cells permission to stop producing cortisol for just a few minutes. You are reclaiming your default mode network, that inner sanctuary we spoke of earlier. By practicing this, you aren't just relaxing, you are performing a sacred act of maintenance for the bridge you are building. You are ensuring that you have the strength to hold the hands of those who need you without breaking yourself in the process. Because you have spent so long being the interpreter between the old world and the new, it is time to learn the most important language of all, the language of your own peace. But there is one more thing we must address. Even when we breathe, even when we understand the science, there is a quiet, nagging voice in the back of our minds that tells us we don't have the right to stop. It's a voice that grew out of our independent childhoods and tells us that our value is tied only to how much we can carry. Why is it so hard for us to say no without feeling like we've committed a crime? Soft, psychologically safe, and empathetic. Why is it so hard for us to say no without feeling like we've committed a crime? It is because for so long we have defined ourselves as the ones who hold the two ends of the rope, the ones who make sure the tension never snaps. We feel that if we let go of even a single strand, the people on either side of us will fall. But what if I told you that this in-between space you inhabit is not a place of exile or a sign of being lost? What if it is actually your greatest psychological asset? At Slow Down a Little, we believe that being a bridge is a specialized form of mastery. Think about a quiet evening in your living room. Your mother is sitting in the armchair, perhaps struggling to understand why her grandson won't put down his tablet to talk about his day. Your son, on the other hand, feels like he is sharing his life by showing her a video he made. You sit there, watching the silent friction between them. You are the only person in the room who truly understands both of them. You understand the analog weight of your mother's silence and the digital pulse of your son's connection. When you lean over and explain to your mother what the video means, and then gently remind your son to look his grandmother in the eye, you are acting as an architect of human connection. You are speaking a language that no one else in that room can speak. In the Cambridge Handbook of Personal Relationships, scholars discuss a concept called dialectical theory. It sounds academic, but it is actually a beautiful way to describe the rhythm of your life. It suggests that all relationships are a constant negotiation between opposing forces, like the pull for closeness versus the need for space, or the comfort of the predictable versus the excitement of the new. Most people feel like they have to choose one side or the other to find peace. They think they must be either fully connected or fully autonomous. But you, as a member of this unique generation, have mastered the art of living in the tension. You are tech bilingual. You know how to sit in a room with someone and feel the profound meaning in a long pause or a shared look, a skill learned in the analog days before every gap was filled with a screen. Yet, you also understand the fluidity and speed of the digital world. You don't just use technology, you translate it through a human heart. This position of in-betweenness is what psychologists call a liminal identity. It is not a state of being fragmented, it is a state of being a whole that contains many parts. When you feel invisible at work, caught between the rigid structures of the older leadership and the rapid, decentralized energy of the younger team, remember that you are the glue. You are the one who knows how to honor the past while building the future. You are the keeper of the memory of what it feels like to have a log out button. In a world that is increasingly losing its boundaries, your memory of a world with boundaries is a sacred gift. You are the one who can teach the next generation that silence is not something to be feared, and you are the one who can show the older generation that connection can take new, glowing forms. This is the noble work of generativity that we mentioned earlier. By caring for those behind you and those ahead of you, you are fulfilling a deep human need to create continuity. You are building a legacy that isn't made of money or stone, but of understanding. You are the reason the history of your family doesn't have a gap in it. But a bridge can only hold weight if its foundations are cared for. It is time to stop viewing your exhaustion as a failure of character and start viewing it as the natural wear and tear of a structure that is doing vital work. At Slow Down a Little, we want you to realize that you are the center of the mosaic. Every no you say to an unnecessary demand is a yes to the strength of the bridge. Every minute you spend in the quiet of your default mode network is an act of maintenance for the souls who rely on you. You are not ket in the middle. You are the heart of the connection. You are the one who remembers the pace of a human breath. And in this fast-moving world, that memory is the most precious thing you own. Let us lean into that strength together as we move toward the final steps of this journey. And it is in that very breath, the one you just took, that we find our way back home. As you sit here in the quiet aftermath of our journey, perhaps the house has grown even stiller. The humming of the refrigerator, the distant tick of a clock, the soft rhythm of your own heart. These are the sounds of your reality, the one that doesn't require a password or a high-speed connection. You have spent so much of your life building bridges for everyone else to cross, making sure that your aging parents feel safe in a world they no longer recognize, and ensuring your children are prepared for a digital future you are still trying to map out. But as we close our time together today, slow down a little once to ask you, when was the last time you stood still long enough to let your own soul catch up with you? Take a moment to look at your hands. They have carried groceries, signed mortgage papers, held the trembling hands of elders, and wiped away the tears of a new generation. They are the hands of a tech bilingual bridge builder. You might feel that they are tired, and you might even feel a sense of invisible weight pressing down on your chest. In our deep dive today, we identified this as role strain, the structural burden of being the generation caught between the analog past and the digital future. It is a psychological state where the demands of your various roles, as a child, a parent, a professional, and a partner, begin to pull in contradictory directions. We often think that if we just worked a little harder, stayed up a little later, or organized our calendars a bit better, this weight would disappear. But the always-on culture we live in is designed to ensure there is always one more thing to do. The transactional worldview of our modern era tells us that every moment must be productive, every connection must be documented, and every silence must be filled. But your analog heart remembers better. It remembers that the most profound parts of being human happen in the gaps, in the boredom that births creativity, in the waiting that builds patience, and in the default mode network where your brain finally gets to rest and reflect. Psychologist Erik Erikson spoke of this stage of life as a time for generativity, the noble act of creating a legacy and caring for those who follow. It is a sacred impulse, a way of accumulating merit and building peace for your lineage. But as we have learned, if you give until you are empty, you are no longer a bridge, you are a ruin. True strength is not self-reliance to the point of exhaustion. True strength is the wisdom to know when to log out. It is the compassion to treat yourself with the same tenderness you offer your fragile parents and your growing children. If you are feeling invisible, please know that your work is the very glue holding the history of your family together. You are the continuity. You are the one who ensures that the wisdom of the old world isn't lost in the speed of the new. That is a heavy mantle, and it is okay. It is more than okay to admit that you are weary. Your weariness is a testament to the depth of your love and the scale of your sacrifice. So, as we part ways today, I want to offer you 3 simple invitations, 3 ways to find your Nuttat, your exit button, and reclaim your peace. First, I invite you to perform a physical act of logging out. When this podcast ends, do not immediately click on the next video or check your notifications. Instead, place your phone on a table, face down. Walk away from it. Feel the air on your skin. Look at something that isn't glowing. Let the digital world stay in the machine, just like it did when we were children. Second, I invite you to return to your breath. Remember the 4-6 regulation we practiced. Even if you only have 1 minute, breathe in for 4 and out for 6. With every long exhale, tell your sympathetic nervous system, that racing engine inside you, that the threat has passed. Tell yourselves that for this moment, you are safe. There is no email, no bill, no crisis that requires your adrenaline right now. Finally, I invite you to practice a new kind of self-talk. In the silence of your mind,
I want you to say these words. Today, I have done enough. Say it until you believe it. You do not need to fix your entire life tonight. You do not need to solve the problems of the next 10 years. You only need to be present in this one moment of safety. You are the heart of the connection, the architect of the bridge, and the keeper of the human rhythm. May you find the grace to rest in your own sanctuary tonight. May you be blessed with the stillness that heals, and may your heart find the quiet center it so deserves. This is Slow Down a Little. Thank you for walking this bridge with me. Rest well.